Okay, so how can we tell it's recording unless the red light is on?
I keep telling you, there's no red light on this. It's not a red light.
Then how do we know it's recording?
Well, because I tell you right before I hit record, and two, the blue camera icon that I push turns red.
So there is a red light.
It's not a red light. It's not that kind of camera.
Okay, so let me know when it's recording.
It is. I hit the record. It's recording now.
No, stop messing around.
From the deepest, darkest recesses of Dangerous Nerds headquarters, Keith Moncrief and Gerry Kissel.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Pop Culture Minefield. That's Keith.
That's Gerry.
And we're here to talk about some nerd stuff. So what's on the plate today?
Well, we are going to have an all Star Trek show due to the fact they just finished the big Star Trek convention out in Las Vegas.
Man, I wish I'd been there.
I know. It just seemed to be the place. If you are a Star Trek fan, that was the place to be. In fact, it was that event that had all the big announcements last year, including the announcement from Sir Patrick Stewart about the coming Picard show. Yes. So this year, we were all hoping for a lot of big announcements.
Yes, and I guess we'll talk about if we had any or not.
Well, there's always something to talk about, especially nowadays.
Very much so. And on top of that, we've got a new segment from our game girl herself, Dee Crowley.
Dee!
Yeah, and man, she killed it last episode, didn't she, with that Resident Evil 6 stuff?
Oh, scary, but fun.
It was fun, and she really nailed it. That's all I got to say. She's a great addition. Susan recommended her, and I'm glad she joined our family. Thank you.
I believe we have a few more surprises in store for you guys, so just stick around.
All right, so let's get that ball kicking, and let's go. Now, in our top story, which you brought up, we were talking about the future of the Star Trek franchise, and we saw some big stuff, and a lot of people may not be aware of how some of these things affect other things.
Yes.
So first, let's start with Picard.
Yes.
Because I know you wanted to talk about Picard because really a lot happened.
Yeah, well, look, basically a majority of the information about Picard was pretty much released during San Diego Comic-Con. And that was one of the things that was kind of a complaint for this event because it didn't seem like they had a lot to really discuss. You had a lot of the actors and people behind things had more of a free hand, but it was, you expected a lot more.
Right.
And when it comes to Star Trek, now controlled by CBS, one would have thought that CBS would have taken the opportunity to try to move this event along the same lines that Disney is running D23, because look, 2 years is what they've announced with the MCU and Phase 4. Phase 4 is only going to be 2 years long, and they've done stuff where they've gone out at least 5 years last time. So a lot of people, myself included, believe that D23 is going to have even more information, and that Phase 5 might actually be announced at D23, and it's going to include a lot more movies they did not get around to.
As well as TV shows.
And TV shows that they didn't get around to at San Diego. The understanding, or at least what I had heard from Kevin Feige based on an interview, is they just thought that what little they talked about at San Diego was enough. CBS doesn't seem to have that same kind of thing going on with Star Trek.
No, it's really strange. In fact, we because I know you and I kind of expected that.
Yeah.
Because we thought they were going to treat this Star Trek event like Disney was treating D23. And it seemed more to me like, I hate using this reference, but it is the best way to refer to something. It was like they shot their load at Comic-Con.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the big money shot was there, and then it was just sort of like some nice petting.
Yeah, well, basically, if you'd been paying attention to a lot of the information released at San Diego, you've heard a lot of this before. Picard is going to be an excellent series. You've got Patrick Stewart, along with a whole new grouping of actors that have been built around and that were a part of the original story that Alex Kurtzman was doing.
Exactly, and it's part of that comic, and that's why they're re-releasing it, so people can become more familiarized of what Data's role is in this.
Mm-hmm. That's part of the whole new thing. Now that we've heard, from people like Robert Meyer Burnett about what actually went on when the previous showrunner for Discovery, and the real creator of Discovery in my opinion, Brian Fuller, what he had proposed, and the fact that seems like the basic idea for Picard was something that he had come up with rather than Alex Kurtzman. And it seems to have explained a lot of things, but also a lot of the last-minute nature of some of these changes, including adding Jerry Ryan and as 7 of 9, and of course adding Brent Spiner as Data or whomever he's going to be in this.
Well, they show the dismantled android, and I'm assuming that that's actually B4.
Yeah.
Not because Data was destroyed.
Yeah, completely atomized.
So, but when at the end of Nemesis they put his chip in B4, and it ended the film with him having a memory.
Yeah.
That moment.
Yeah.
Where you knew Data was trying to come out. So that's what I've always surmised that that's what's going on with
a lot of people did. And again.
But then Brent Spiner is like playing a game at I'm not B4, and he doesn't want to go into detail of why he's Data, and I'm like, well, you can't be Data because Data was destroyed.
Now, rumors that I've heard is that scene with Picard and Data
is either on the holodeck,
yeah,
or it's from a memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as Data being back, I've always believed that based on all of the stuff they've done or had done during the series run of Next Generation, and this is one of those things that if you're a newbie and you didn't pay attention to all of the Next Generation episodes, you know that there is an actual whole department within Starfleet dedicated to Data. There were people that were responsible for taking him apart and trying to figure out how he works and what he does. There's a doctor that Data didn't really care for, that in the episode where he built his daughter, the doctor came on board. That's a whole... Look, they have had years to try to figure out how Data works. There are schematics, even with B4.
And all they had to do was ask, Dr. Noonien Soong.
But you have an earlier version in B4. To me, it's really just a simple matter.
He was a blank slate.
Yeah.
That's all he was, because he had no personality.
Yeah. And his actual internal workings are really basic compared to Data's. So really it's just about taking all of your schematics and taking what B4 has and trying to figure out how to...
Well, and I'm also assuming that Data may have played a huge part in that. But once again, to point out, in Kurtzman's comic book...
Yes.
Which was not a bad comic. I read it. It's actually pretty good.
It is a very good comic.
Data is Data.
Yes.
And he is at odds with Picard. And it's why Picard leaves Starfleet. What happens between the two of them.
Yes.
Don't want to spoil for you. Go read the comic book.
Yeah, go read the comic. As far as what Robert Meyer Burnett had said, as far as the actual step-by-step incidents, that is phenomenal, and personally proves again why it was a big mistake to get rid of Brian Fuller. Fuller seems like he had just thought everything out, including all of the stuff that had been written by Robert Orci and Alex Kurtzman, and putting that all together and assembling it into something that I think is slightly better than what we've gotten now.
And we learned something this week, you and I, that Robert Orci was not who we thought he was.
Yeah. The big rumor as to the reason why you don't see him anymore is that it could have something to do, rumor really, that he may have gotten in trouble for a little plagiarizing when it came to the script for Star Trek 3, what eventually became Star Trek Beyond. Like I said, rumor. But
not to mention, he was shit talking with a lot of fans.
Yeah,
and
that's not a
and just being rude to even people interviewing him. It's like you don't do that.
Yeah.
But let's cut this forward to going back to Alex Kurtzman now.
Yes.
Because everybody, I know you've all heard that he is doing a new adaptation of the book The Man Who Fell to Earth.
Yes.
And everybody makes the mistake of going, oh, he's remaking David Bowie's film. It's like, no, David Bowie was the first iteration.
Yeah.
There was another one in '87.
Yeah.
Which was not bad. It was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
It was a made-for-TV movie. Not bad at all. And it stuck, I believe, closer to the book.
Yeah.
And so now he's going to be doing this. I don't know how much he's going to be doing a nod to The Man Who Fell to Earth with David Bowie, or if any at all. But this is important. And a lot of people are like, why is that important to Star Trek? He'll explain it to you.
Well, basically, this, Kurtzman has a 5-year deal that he had signed when he first joined, when he got hired by Les Moonves to come in and do all of this. Now, they have already had, we've already gone through 2 seasons of Star Trek Discovery.
Right.
So we have another 3 years left on that deal. Obviously, CBS has no real faith in Kurtzman when it comes to his work on Star Trek as of right now. So instead of firing him, since he has an ironclad contract that would basically cost CBS millions if they wanted to just fire him.
Yeah, they would just be giving him money for nothing.
Yeah. So basically, you keep him working, just don't have him work on Star Trek.
Yeah, so now he's the showrunner on The Man Who Fell to Earth.
But here's the twist, okay? Secret Hideout, which is the company that's actually been hired to control everything and create Star Trek, is Alex Kurtzman's company.
Also under J.J. Abrams.
But it's still his company. So even though Kurtzman isn't running things personally, it still all comes under...
Yeah, and he's going to have his name on it. He'll always have his name on it. But this is why I think we've seen so many changes.
Yes.
And why it's starting to feel a little more familiar. And
a little more, but that also has something to do with other things happening.
Yes, and let's go into that, because the CBS Viacom reunification. It's like the Vulcans and the Romulans getting back together again on Next Generation.
Yes, and this will probably be a little more successful. Look, I personally have been wanting this for quite a while.
Well, we started this show.
Yeah.
One of the first things we talked about was getting them to get it back together again.
Because all of this broken up stuff really makes no sense. It really doesn't. You're trying to create... If you're going to take Star Trek and basically try to compete on some level with, say, Star Wars, first of all, you want to bring all your best people, best weapons, best of what you have with you. What CBS was doing is they were trying to do it by basically tying one arm and both legs behind their backs. This was an exercise in futility, ultimately.
Why they ever did it? I mean, if you go back and watch some of our early episodes, that's really what we were really hammering in.
I can understand the basic reason why Sumner Redstone thought dividing the companies was a good idea. The thing is, we quickly found out, everybody quickly found out that was not really a good idea. And so they've had a hell of a time trying to put everything back together, because CBS has been acting like, well, we can do things on our own, and we're big boys now.
This isn't Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek anymore, it's CBS's. But it feels, we're starting to feel that familiarity again, so it's starting to feel a little bit better. Fans are cautious. We're all of us are a little gun shy, but the fact is I got good feelings about some of this. I think it's going to get better.
Yes.
And we've got, what's her name, Michelle Paradise and Michael Chabon are actually stepping into the roles of dealing with this instead of Kurtzman.
Yes, yes. Now, one thing we have to really put out there. While they are still discussing how all of this is going to fit together, I think the one thing that has pretty much become evident at this point is that no matter what, Discovery is going to remain Discovery for the foreseeable future. No matter what happens with this deal, by the time they get everything ironed out, we will have already gone past 3 seasons of the show, which would make it easier for them to just go ahead and shut the show down and allow everybody to go up. I mean, 3 seasons is the bare minimum of what you need
in order to
syndicate and go through everything else. At the rate everything is going, if everything is successful with the reunification of Viacom and CBS, Star Trek Discovery could be kind of like a passing phase. 3 seasons and out. And then the rest of it be formatted to fit something that I think more people would be more amenable to. Now, again, if you are a fan of Discovery, that's great. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, good on you, man.
And there is no reason not to like it, okay? But seriously, there aren't enough of you guys who seemingly like it that are actually buying a lot of the merchandise. Now, part of it is the fact that there isn't that much merchandise because a lot of the people, a lot of the businesses for whom have been traditional partners in Star Trek and putting out merchandise really could care less about the stuff connected to Discovery. And this has nothing to do with political views, sex, or whatever. They just don't think it's very good. And those particular companies that care truly about profit and money have noticed that not a lot of you guys are spending it when it comes to Discovery-related stuff. One major company backed out of a deal with that because not enough of you guys decided to go ahead and put in orders in advance for a lot of the products that they were trying to put together. That was McFarlane Toys.
Yep.
Todd McFarlane will do business with anybody as long as you got cash.
Yeah, he's the Mikey
yeah.
of toy making.
Look,
he likes anything.
As long as there's money in it, he's down with it. He doesn't give a care. The very fact that he backed out of that deal had nothing to do with any personal bias against it.
It had to do with numbers.
It was just sheer numbers. Not enough of you guys.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, what I've seen from the fan base for Discovery are good moral supporters, but not people who want to put money into it.
And that's really the problem, especially where CBS is concerned with Alex Kurtzman. Yeah, okay, there are other problems connected to Discovery and Alex Kurtzman, but what it really comes down to with CBS is they need money. Why? Because they're spending a lot of it.
Hand over fist.
And you don't just spend money like that without any consequence. And to me, that's really what's driving a lot of this. CBS had only considered doing all of this mainly because they've spent a lot of money and there's not a lot of money coming in.
And now I do want to point out one of the things that costs less money, hopefully will bring in some new fans, is the Lower Decks. Even though I don't have any aspirations of it being any good,
yeah,
I will watch it, see what happens.
That makes one of us. Look, Starship Regulars. Just go to YouTube, watch it. It's the same thing. The same thing. In fact, again, Star Trek, CBS is since they hold all of the rights to it, can pretty much base anything they want off of anything Star Trek related in the past.
There you go.
And we've seen what they've done to the fan films. That's basically what Starship Regulars was. It was kind of like the Orville, like an animated Orville. They just decided to take the basic idea and use that and create Star Trek Lower Decks. There's not much going on. I mean, to me, there's no there.
We'll see.
Yeah, we will see.
We'll see.
If that's something that you want to enjoy and spend your time on, you're more than welcome to join Gary as you guys go off and have a good time.
Doesn't mean I'm going to be a fan.
Yeah.
I will probably make fun of it. But with that, we're going to go ahead to our first commercial break, and we'll be right back. Hey, we're back. Thanks for sticking around.
Because it is time for Zeitgeist. Welcome to Zeitgeist, our weekly rundown of the hottest moments in pop culture.
And let's go to number 1.
Andy Serkis being named director of Venom 2.
Yeah, I don't know, it's kind of exciting to see this, but at the same time, as good an actor as he is, and physical performer, he's got a kind of a bad reputation with the CG effects world, kind of dismissing them and not giving them the deserved credit for the work they do. I mean, he did step up and apologize and try to make amends, but the fact is I suspect he's going to be a repeat offender. And forget that that beautiferous look of his show is really not because of his performance all the time.
This could be something really cool if Andy Serkis is able to call forth everything he has learned and just focus in on trying to deliver something kind of unique. Now, while I will admit that Andy Serkis wasn't in my top 5 list of people that could actually take this on as a sequel, this is a Sony joint, and basically this is someone in the form of Andy Serkis who's used to dealing with the MCU, which is a little higher class, but that's fine. That's great. Again, I think Andy's just trying to carve out more experiences and gain more experiences
behind the camera.
Yeah,
exactly.
And this is a good thing. So I'm hoping that the actual script is worthy of his time.
So if you haven't already heard, Amazon is going to remake a great horror film with Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne called Event Horizon.
Now this will be a co-production, between Amazon and Paramount. Okay, turning Event Horizon.
Well, they've had a really good relationship so far with Clancy.
Yeah.
And the Jack Ryan series, just outstanding. So this is promising.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Again, I'll leave it up to you to actually, if you want to actually go and rent the old Lawrence Fishburne, the original film of Event Horizon.
And it's not a bad film.
It is not a
bad
film. It's
like Hellraiser on the edge of a black hole. And it's sort of what it reminded me of.
It's like Hellraiser mixed with Disney's The Black Hole.
Oh, there you go. And it had some interesting stuff. They used good science in it, which is the folding of space.
Yes.
And I thought this is a really nifty film. I was not a huge fan. I've watched it twice. Once because I wanted to, and the second time because somebody else was watching it and I had no choice.
Yeah.
And but I know it's a good film. I know that it's well acted.
Yes.
And it's got great horror elements in it.
Director Paul W.S. Anderson.
Yep.
And again, look, Paul, nothing against you, dude. You got more of a career than I will ever have, and your wife's kind of nice too.
And the new guy, oh yeah, Mila Jovovich, I would love to have you are a very beautiful woman. Adam Wingard is the new guy, and he's the showrunner, executive producer, and he's going to be directing, if not all of the episodes, at least the first one and the last one. You can bet on that. of the season.
A weekly science fiction horror television series.
Well, they did it with Swamp Thing, and Swamp Thing was really good.
Yeah.
Until the last 3 episodes, which you can really tell.
Yeah.
That was when they got told that they're not going to have 13 episodes and they got to consolidate. And the writing went to crap. And it just was, you could feel it. The last 3 episodes were very disappointing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched it yet or not.
No, I haven't seen it yet. That's the whole thing with a streaming service.
The Blue Devil was the one thing I was really looking forward to. Biggest letdown. But they did such a good job. And the ending is so anticlimactic.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like credits start rolling, you go, that's it? That was your ending? Huh. And I mean it. I made that face. So, huh. This, on the other hand, I think is ambitious.
Yeah.
To be doing a horror series based off of a classic 90s horror film.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to it. And if you haven't heard, there's a new movie coming to the movie theaters. It's called The Matrix. And I know some people said they thought that there was a version that came out before, but you know that didn't happen.
20th anniversary of The Matrix, and I know that is still mind-boggling because I actually saw it in the theater when it came out. 20 years since The Matrix, and they're going to celebrate by re-releasing it to theaters now. Hopefully, this will be something where they've actually, I'm sure they've cleaned up the footage a bit, and you know they're going to make it so that a lot of you youngsters out there will actually enjoy seeing, you know, bullet time for the first time.
Yeah, bullet time. When that first happened,
awesome.
It was like, wow.
It's still awesome. There's nothing like that around now. It's still awesome. It's a good film. It's a good, solid, original film. It's the
one thing that they ever made,
yeah.
the Wachowskis, that didn't suck.
Well, I think some of their stuff that they were attempting prior to The Matrix was good.
I don't remember anything prior to The Matrix.
Bound. Good movie. Check it out.
Oh, I hated that movie.
You hated Bound?
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah, it was like...
it's not as bad as Jupiter Ascending.
Oh, well, nothing's as bad as Jupiter Ascending. Basically, The Matrix was a one-of-a-kind film. And it sort of changed the landscape. And we tend to like movies that do that.
It, in my opinion, had more to do with making the modern day comic book movies possible than even really X-Men.
And most people don't even know it was based on a comic. So there you go. Go look that up. And of course, I know we've talked about this before, but you got to understand, we are fans.
Yeah.
And I am so excited that after 40 years, Star Trek the Motion Picture is also hitting the cinemas again, just like The Matrix. And even though it's not 40 years old. But
it is an important film. It is a milestone film. Look, let me say this. If you are not a Star Trek fan, and I'm especially talking to a lot of you Discovery fans, this is probably not for you because it requires a little thinking, a little, you know...
And real science.
Yeah, a little bit of science because that's why they call it science fiction. So, you know, no, I'm just kidding.
In fact, it's to my knowledge, it was the first film to discuss wormhole.
Yeah.
What a wormhole was.
Yeah.
Because they were in warp travel and they hit a wormhole and got pulled into it.
Yeah.
And it was really nifty what they did.
Yeah,
you know,
the science behind being able to have bioscanner beds was something that we had actually been working on in real life. Now, for me, Star Trek the Motion Picture is special because you're only talking, maybe 9 years after the series had been canceled, and it was already a big screen movie.
Yeah, it was 9 years after that, and 7 years after the cartoon.
Yeah.
Which reunited almost the entire cast. Not all of them. Walter Koenig was, even though he did direct a couple of episodes and worked on scripts, he didn't get to play Chekhov.
Yeah.
But it reunited almost everybody else, and that was really wonderful. And then 7 years after that, 9 years after Star Trek, the series, we got this movie. And the amazing part was, a lot of people don't know, and he and I have talked about it ad nauseum, of how miraculous it was that they got the entire cast. Because they were prepared to replace Nimoy and Shatner.
Nimoy, Shatner, and really, they were going to replace everybody. Because the idea was, this is a big movie, and they wanted big stars. And so the rumor is that they were going to replace the big three with 3 other actors, one of which...
And they were going to try to get bigger names, like Robert Redford, and they talked to a lot of big names in Hollywood to take on these new roles in Star Trek.
And then Star Wars hit. And they figured...
And that was right, because up to Star Wars, it was to be a series called Star Trek Phase 2.
That's right.
And
really, that's really where this film comes from.
Yep.
They were... Roddenberry was in the middle of developing Star Trek Phase 2. They had the cast, and they pretty much were going to bring back everybody except Nimoy. And they had a new character that was going to replace the Spock character, another Vulcan who was a full Vulcan, but more like an Einstein of the Vulcans. And they had a couple of scripts written.
They had great ideas, and the most important thing that I want to point out is anybody who's a fan of The Next Generation, when you watch Star Trek the Motion Picture, if you hear echoes from that movie to what you saw in the first season of The Next Generation,
it's pretty much it.
It is.
Yeah.
Because
Star Trek Phase 2, and
because that was season 2. Season 2 of Star Trek Next Generation, they reissued because of the writer's strike.
Yeah.
A bunch of scripts that were going to go into Phase 2.
Starting with the child.
Yep. That went into it. But not only that, at the pilot, the character of Will Riker and Deanna Troi were based on
Will
Decker.
Will Decker and Ilea.
Well, because she was a sensitive.
Yeah, and that Kirk's character was to become in Phase 2, was really meant to be the prototype for what eventually became Jean-Luc Picard. Basically, everything that you see, aside from having a Klingon on that bridge, was pretty much set up in Star Trek Phase 2. And that Phase 2 idea then became Star Trek the Motion Picture, which eventually became Star Trek The Next Generation.
There's this organic flow that any true Star Trek fan...
Well, even down to the costumes.
Oh, yeah.
When you look at the costumes from the first season of The Next Generation, you notice
very similar
to what they had in the motion picture. And that's more. It has more in common with the motion picture style of doing things than even the original.
It's also why they brought over the theme song.
Yep.
The next generation theme song
is actually
the
Star Trek
motion picture theme.
Yeah. James Wan's next movie is an original story, not based on any IP, and will use old school practical effects.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. We're totally nostalgic about all of the great rubber monster horror movies from the 70s, 80s, and so this is really exciting. Sounds like it could be an homage to the great horror movies of that time.
Really, his Swamp Thing series was too.
Oh, yeah. Maybe it'll be a throwback to some of the great horror films from those days when all they had to work with was what they could build on the spot. Mechanical puppets and foam latex masks and creatures. They got some amazing results. Classic. Great movies like American Werewolf in London. John Carpenter's The Thing. Used practical effects to great effect. And I'm also thinking of the practical and mechanical effects they did for films like Total Recall. Suffocating Arnold. And the exploding Dewey's head come to mind.
Yes.
Sweet.
So we got an update, recording our last episode. There was literally updates constantly coming in about Crisis on Infinite Earth.
Oh, the big CW event.
Yes, and even though I'm not a Greg Berlanti fan, I will be watching this.
You got to respect all the work they're putting into
Well, looking at who they're bringing into it is why I'm coming to the show. I mean, just some of the cast that they brought in, and some of the new stuff, which, we had not, when we recorded the last episode, there was no Black Lightning involved with it. Now, of course, that's in. Which, I think that's great. I couldn't understand why it wasn't happening, because it's in the Berlanti verse.
Well,
so.
now, one of the problems, I think, which, again, they should figure out how they want to do this is, I think Black Lightning is the only one of the Berlanti CW shows that is not filmed in Canada. It's actually filmed in Atlanta.
That's interesting.
So I think the understanding was that they might not be able to make that happen with...
Well, I'm glad they did, no matter what. This is going to be interesting. And, of course, we do know that one of our favorite Bruce Wayne Batmans is going to be in it.
The main man himself, Kevin Conroy.
Kevin Conroy is actually going to finally play a live-action Bruce Wayne possible Batman. So this is really exciting news for all of us classic Legacy fans.
Yeah, he's playing the older Bruce Wayne from I think it's Batman Beyond.
Yes, I'm assuming that's what it is. Yeah, and then of course we got this covered. We just don't take them seriously because they're not even a hit and miss. It's like so far all their predictions have been pretty much wrong. We hear from an inside. It's like if you want to be at the forefront of this kind of media, the kind of stuff we read, you need to not be spotty with your information coming in.
Yeah.
And but they're announcing that their sources are saying that Lex Luthor, Michael Rosenbaum, is going to be in the season.
Even though this tweet from Michael Rosenbaum himself is kind of making fun of the fact that he hadn't even heard anything about that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think we need to hold off on that. Now, that does not mean that Berlanti and the CW can't come to some sort of an arrangement.
Because I would love to see it. He was really, in many ways, he was my favorite character.
Yeah.
When Rosenbaum left, I lost interest and I pretty much stopped watching.
I think a lot of people did.
And I came back to watch the finale and was underwhelmed.
Hey kids, long before Game of Thrones disappointed you with your final episode, you still had Smallville, and Enterprise. So, it's in good company. Looks like we have another transmission coming in.
Oh, we do. But it's not from Captain April. I might be butt dialing us.
No, this is from our favorite gaming girl. That's right, it's Game Girl with Dee and Crowley.
Hey everyone, I'm Dee. Welcome to Game Girl, and I want to talk to you today about aliens. Now, there's something I want to talk to you about first before we get into the alien part. This past weekend was a really tragic moment in our country because of 2 acts of domestic terrorism that happened 13 hours apart. Now, I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm not here to talk about, what's wrong with America, but it is something I want to touch base on. I'm not going to use the whole segment for this, but I want to touch base on it. Something I have heard politicians talk about from across the country right now is blaming video games for our problems. And there's something I want to say about that. Stop. Seriously, stop. Video games are not the problem. Blaming video games for the issues and violence in our country is like blaming the gas pump for you letting your car run out of gas. Sure, it's easy to blame because it's right there, but you let the gas run out. You're blaming something else for a problem that you created. Japan is the hub of video games, and yet they don't have the kind of violence that we have in the States. So there's something else going on. It's time to stop blaming video games because they are an easy out and start looking at the deeper issues and what's causing them. that is all I'm going to talk about it. I promise that is it. However, we are going to go back on the aliens. And so what I want to talk to you about today is the top 5 best alien games. And I'm not talking the movie franchise Alien. I'm not talking about games like Doom, Half-Life, Mass Effect, or anything like that. Because yeah, they do have aliens in them, and they're based around alien planets, but I'm talking about our big-brained, little green men, the Greys, whatever you want to call them, our favorite games, my favorite games, maybe not yours, my favorite games featuring those guys. So number 1, Destroy All Humans. Now, if you've been following E3 or any video game news, you have heard that we're getting a remake of the first game. Yay! So, Destroy All Humans is an action-adventure game that was released initially in June of 2005. It's by Pandemic Studios and published by THQ, and THQ Nordic is doing the new one. But it was released for Xbox 2, unknown game consoles. It was released for PlayStation 2, Xbox, and now it's available for PlayStation 4, I think Xbox One, I think it might have been available for Xbox 360, but it's set in 1959 with all of the tropes. Cryptosporidium 136 has crash landed on Earth and has been captured by the government. So Cryptosporidium 137, or Crypto as his friends like to call him, and Orthopox 13, or Pox, has come on a rescue mission, but they also kind of want to harvest your brain at the same time. And they kind of mistake cows as the ultimate life form on Earth. It's funny, it's silly, and it's aged really, really well. There was a big retro sale going on last month on PSN, and it was like $2.99. So you might as well play the old ones before you hit the new ones in 2020. Number 2, XCOM UFO Defense, or in Europe it was called XCOM Enemy Unknown. Now, there are a ton of XCOM games, and why I didn't pick XCOM 2, you know, it's good, but there's just something about XCOM UFO Defense that makes it super, super special. It was released in 1994 on Windows. Listen to this, guys. Okay, ready? On Windows, PlayStation 1, DOS, MS-DOS, and Amiga OS. I personally played it on MS-DOS. Spoiler alert, she's old. But yeah, I played it on MS-DOS when I was younger. And it was really hard back then, and I'm like, oh, you know what? It was just because I was a kid. No, it's a really hard game. This is designed by Julian Gollop. It is real-time management, so it's RTS, real-time strategy game, and it's turn-based tactics. So you're on a government team. You run a government team that its purpose is to protect the Earth from alien invasions. So you get notification of a UFO that has landed somewhere in a part of the world. And then you make up a team based on the information that is relayed to you. You go out and you basically kill the aliens. Before they kidnap people, before they kill people, and things like that. And it's different kinds of aliens, it's different locations. I mean, it's super simple because it's 1994. But it had the best sound mixing, best sound effects. The music was awesome, and maybe it's just because I'm nostalgic. I loved it. I thought it was awesome. No XCOM game has ever gotten to the level, I guess, that UFO Defense did, but maybe that's just me. But next up, we have Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, and Abe's Exodus. Now, I didn't play Abe's Odyssey. I played Abe's Exodus, and I loved that game. There was something about the graphics that were weird. Like, it was almost too good for when it came out. It originally came out in 1997, so this came out a year after Resident Evil, and even though Resident Evil had those blocky textures, Resident Evil 2 still had the polygons and everything like that. Abe's Oddworld was a 2D platformer, and the graphics were just strange. Like, and when I was a kid, it made me actually feel uncomfortable because they were so different and so good from what I was used to. This came out Also listen to this. PS1, MS-DOS, Game Boy, PS Portable, Vita, Windows, and eventually PS3. It was developed by Sapphire? I can't read my handwriting notes. Are you grown up and I can't? Sapphire Corporation and, you guys, Oddworld Inhabitants. There we go. Bad at this. It follows Abe, who is a Mudokon slave at Rupture Farms meat processing factory, but much like Soylent Green was people, Mudokon slaves were the meat of choice at Rupture Farms. Yeah. Abe got wise of this. He had to get himself out. Not only himself, but his peeps, his buddies. So this was so hard, and it was just, I don't know, the game just makes you feel uncomfortable for some reason, but maybe that's just me. Next up, we have The Visitor. The Visitor is an indie game that came out in 2007 for Android, for Linux, and for Mac. It was developed by J. Zeitgeist. I'm sorry if that's not how you say it. And published by Newgrounds. You play as a little tiny alien worm, and you must crawl your way across these puzzles. And basically, you figure, it's like a point and click almost, and you figure out the puzzles in the order in which you're supposed to do them, because with every victim that you kill, you get bigger and you gain their characteristics. So like if you were to kill a bird, you'd get bigger and you'd grow wings. If you were to kill a cat, you'd have claws plus your wings, you know what I mean? So it's really super gory, it's silly, it's funny, and it's not too difficult. So even though, you know, it's kind of like a game, it's easy, it's a great time killer. Last up is a game that's a little bit different, but it's something that I really wanted to include. This is another indie game, and this is called Prey. And Prey was released in May of 2017 by Arcane Studios and published by Bethesda. And it's a first-person action-adventure shooter. It is open world, and you are on a space station, and it is filled to the brim with an aggressive alien species, basically. But the cool thing about this, much like in The Thing, they can shapeshift, but they don't just shapeshift into people. They shapeshift into, like, things. So you could be walking into a room and suddenly the chair is trying to kill you. You know. I think I actually saw that. I was going to say I'm exaggerating, but I think I actually saw that at one point. Regardless, this thing is creepy, and it's also in an alternative universe where JFK survives the assassination, so the space race like zooms, and like we're farther along in space exploration than ever before, which kind of makes sense actually. But yeah, that one's it's super creepy, it's dark, it has that indie game feel, but because it is published by Bethesda, I was going to say it's not as broken, but Bethesda doesn't have as good of a track record with releasing games that are not broken, but don't tell them I said that. Anyway, that is my list for the 5 Alien games featuring our favorite greys, our favorite worms, our favorite shape-shifting chairs. I hope you liked the list. I hope you agreed with some of them. If we didn't include your favorite little green man game, let us know in the comments. And, you know, maybe we can cover it again in the future. So thank you guys so much for watching Game Girl. I will see you next week. Bye.
That was a great segment, as usual, from Dee Dee Crowley. Thank you. And we love that you joined the family. Thank you. Well, that's about it on this end. From Dee Dee, Keith, Commander Robert April, and myself, as well as the rest of the team at Pop Culture Minefield, we want to thank you for joining us. If you have any comments or ideas for any future shows, be sure to leave us a comment down below. We love all the input.
Hey, we hope you'll consider subscribing to our channel. We have new episodes out every Friday, and we release extra stuff during the week when it comes up. So be sure to click on the bell icon and stay notified of of all our new releases.
Yeah. If you really want to make us feel special, head on over to the Patreon page at patreon.com/popcultureminefield, where for just as little as $1 a month, you can help our channel grow. And we'll even list you on the credits of the show as our eternal gratitude. Your name will be forever immortalized in pixels and in the links to the show notes. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week. We will be back, unless something untoward occurs.
Oh, yeah. And remember, our Bond, James Bond episode is coming.
It's going to be on the 7th episode of the season.
Yeah, so you won't
007 on the 7th.
So you won't want to miss it.
That's right, and we're going to be doing a 007 special with Dee Dee as well. So she's going to be checking out some of the games. So I'm really looking forward to what she's got to say about it.
Cool.
Well, that's it, guys. We're out of here. So roll credits.